Hello, I'm a grateful believer in Jesus in recovery for porn addiction. I also struggle with codependency and anger. My name is Kelsey.
And I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ who celebrates recovery over depression and struggles with low self-esteem and codependency. My name is Danielle.
I was born in Little Rock, Arkansas, to a mother, father, and an older brother who was not at all happy I had been born. My brother bullied me from a very early age. I learned that I didn't belong and I wasn't good enough. In addition, my parents divorced when I was still just a baby. School wasn't any better than home. I was a small child, which made me an easy target for bullies. And this made it even harder to fit in. The bullies were relentless. I got called names, beat up, shoved into trash cans, told I was ugly and a freak of nature. I was told that I was too small, my ears and eyes too big. I wasn't smart enough. I wasn't good enough. I wasn't enough. I felt ashamed of who I was because the only me that I knew was the one the bullies told me about. My brother had an older friend who lived right behind us, and he really took an interest in me. And it didn't take long before he began to sexually abuse me. This abuse went on for about 4 years. I didn't want it to happen, but I didn't know how to make it stop either. I felt dirty, ashamed, and like I didn't matter to anyone. This shame would follow me for many years. I blamed myself for it and believed that no one would ever love me if they found out about this dark secret of mine. My dad remarried, and this was exciting at first. My dad's new wife seemed nice, and so did her daughters. I began to experience feelings that I had never experienced before. Not knowing what these feelings were or how to express them in a healthy manner, and only having my sexual abuse as a guidebook, I began to act out sexually. My new stepmother made it her mission to fix me. She became verbally and emotionally abusive towards me, and I felt damaged and unwanted all over again. Then the opportunity to move in with my mother presented itself to me, and I couldn't refuse. I accepted the invitation and went to live with my mother, stepfather, and brother. Once there, my brother began to let me hang out with him and his friends. I made up my mind that I was going to do whatever I had to fit in. I was going to do everything that they did. So I started telling cruel jokes and cussing. This is also when I began to drink, smoke cigarettes, use drugs, namely marijuana, and use pornography.
I was born on June 16, 1993, to a loving father and mother and a stinker of an older brother. My childhood growing up was pretty normal. As a family, we practically lived in church. I was saved and baptized at an early age and followed my parents' example by serving in all different areas of the church. Even though we were always at church, there was still fighting at home. It never seemed like a big deal, but I do remember a couple of times that family friends would keep me and my brother when things got bad. I really didn't know how to fix everyone fighting, so I just stuck to myself. I had people in my life, but I didn't trust anyone and felt unable to truly connect with others. Because I was so isolated, I started listening to the voice inside me, which told me I was unloved, worthless, and unable to help anyone, including myself. I felt numb and emotionless, and in order to feel anything, I started cutting. I was ashamed of my actions. I knew it was wrong, but I didn't know how to stop. I didn't know how to get better on my own. This ongoing self-inflicted mental and physical abuse continued to get worse until December 10th, 2006, I tried to take my own life. My failed attempt only made me hate myself even more. This event started a new chapter in my life characterized by a long line of therapists and medication. I didn't believe anything could ever change, and I thought if anyone knew how messed up I really was, they would never want to be near me.
As I entered high school, my drinking and drug use were in full swing. I'd show up to class high and sneak alcohol into the school and give it to the other kids. I had found a way to fit in. I was the go-to for anything prohibited. If you wanted it, I could get it. My porn addiction was also in high gear at this time. I had access it on the computer at home and at school, wherever, whenever I could get it. And porn was my preferred escape from a very painful reality. My stepfather was a raging alcoholic, and when he drank, he became very abusive towards me and my mother. I remember lying in bed at night and listening to them arguing and fighting. They'd yell and cuss. Then he in his drunken rage would begin hitting her. I wanted to stop it, to go beat him up and throw him out of the house. But I was paralyzed by fear. The next day, he'd slap me, pick me up and shake me, and tell me I was a worthless piece of garbage. Again, I believed what someone else said about me. I felt worthless, unloved, and unwanted. I felt like there was no hope, that I'd just be a punching bag for the rest of my life. I became angry at God. I was a freak that no one could love, and it was God's fault He made me this way. I was trapped in a real-life nightmare. I searched for a permanent escape, and one day an Army recruiter showed up at my school, and I had found my escape. I was going to join the Army and live a life of fun and adventure. I enlisted at the age of 17 with a parental consent signed by my mom, and I shipped out as soon as I could.
In high school, I began to wear masks to make everyone around me believe that I was getting better. In the winter of my sophomore year, my grandfather passed away. Everyone around me said that he was in a better place, but I didn't care. I just wanted him back, so I was angry at God. I knew I wasn't processing his loss well, so I went to my guidance counselor thinking that I could share with her my feelings. But she thought that I was suicidal again, and I ended up hospitalized for the second time. I was then dropped from my high school in May because of the hospital stay. The next fall, I had to start over at a new school where no one knew me. But this was my clean slate to reinvent myself, leave everything in the past. In class, I would play the part of the straight-A student and teacher's pet. With friends, I would transform into the witty, sarcastic girl who had her life together and didn't need anyone. At church, I was strong in my beliefs, and I had absolutely no doubts in my faith. At home, I was the perfect angel with no problem or struggles. I wore my masks on top of other masks, and I couldn't trust anyone with who I really was. I'm not sure if anyone had ever seen any of the real me. This acting may have made me look better from the outside, but inside I was torn in pieces. I had so much self-hatred, self-doubt, trust issues. I knew that the inside me, the real me, was scary, and no one would like, much less love me. My senior year of high school started with me informing my therapist that I did not want to take medication for depression anymore, and he was okay with that. He believed that it would be a good step for me to take. I guess in his mind, he thought that if I could get through my senior year of high school without my chemical pick-me-up, I could make it thereafter, because nothing's as hard as senior year in high school. So in an effort to get off of my medication, I added another mask, the girl who loved herself completely and never thought about dying. This front was no truer than any others. Throughout that first year without medication, my depression became something almost tangible, physical, in how deep I felt it. I didn't pack it, but it moved with me to college, and there I would develop some very unhealthy coping mechanisms in the form of cigarettes, alcohol, and sex. The first few months away from my home, my use escalated dramatically. I graduated from nicotine to marijuana. I drank while away at school and when I went home, and I read more romance novels than textbooks, and I believed if I could only matter if someone was in love with me. Throughout my teen years, and even this first year at college, I could feel my very weak belief in God shifting. I wasn't sure what was right or wrong anymore. I didn't really understand the difference between being a good person and wholeheartedly following Jesus. I didn't have a personal relationship with God. I had a community relationship with God. I would go to this building with these other people, and all together we would worship God and read the Bible, but I didn't understand how or even why to follow Him outside of those four walls.
In the Army, I had escaped the external circumstances, the abuse, the belittling, and the name-calling. I had not, however, escaped my internal turmoil. I had brought it with me, all of it. I would spend entire paychecks on alcohol and porn, and when I ran out of money, I took out credit cards and got loans from the bank. I still hated myself and felt like I didn't fit in. Soon I received orders to Fort Bragg and was deployed to Afghanistan, where God would begin His work in me. I got really close to the chaplain and his assistant and was asked to lead a Bible study. I had never led a Bible study before, but I grew up in church. I didn't really feel qualified to lead it, but I did it anyway, thinking that it would make me popular. I started the deployment working in operations and going on a few missions as a Black Hawk door gunner. And then after getting into a yelling match with a superior officer, I was taken off that duty and sent to help build and maintain the facilities on the base. There I became friends with a civilian contractor. And one night, while he and I were standing outside and visiting, he began to tell me the story of how I got saved. He told me the name of the church, the color of the carpet and pews, details there was no way he could know. He also told me that God had a great calling on my life, to be a teacher of the Word. The deployment wrapped up. I left the Army and came back to Arkansas and got my own place. I continued to spend large sums of money on alcohol and porn, and since I was out of the service, rediscovered marijuana. After all, I had served my country and earned the right to do what I wanted, when I wanted. The truth is that I was still a slave to all of those things, especially porn. My dad and stepmom invited me over for dinner one night. It was an intervention. I didn't resist. I knew I needed help. I agreed to meet with the pastor from my childhood church. I told him about everything. I came clean and faced reality for the first time. Then he stood me up, gave me a hug, and told me he loved me and was proud of me for being honest with him about my addiction. He assured me that God had a plan for me and my pain. He told me about a ministry where I could find healing and hope. It was called Celebrate Recovery. I'd seen an ad in a newspaper about it, but it was for addicts. And I wasn't a real addict. I just had this thing with porn. I wasn't one of those people. But I went to make everyone happy. I pulled up to the church and paused. And then a friendly smile greeted and welcomed me in. I found out that I did fit in at CR after all. I started a couple of step studies, but did not finish them. Pride began to slip in, and I began to feel, after 2.5 years, that I no longer needed CR. I had the porn thing handled and was strong enough to do this on my own. I left that CR and relapsed almost immediately.
My freshman year at college flew by, and I came home for summer break. After a night out with some friends, I found myself on a walk with a close friend. On that walk, I met the man who would later become my husband. His name was Kelsey.
That night, we hung out until almost 5 a.m. The next day, I did something completely out of character for me, something bold. I sent her a text asking if she'd join me for dinner and a movie. She, much to my surprise, said yes. I took her to the most romantic movie I could think of.
Star Trek Into Darkness. During that first summer together, we went to church very few times. I felt distant from the church family I grew up with, so we tried going to Kelsey's church, but I didn't fit in with the people there because I was too broken. And since Kelsey and I were not following God's guidelines and had a sexual relationship, I felt guilty anytime I was in a church. So instead of using the Holy Spirit's convictions as a reason to get my life right, I just chose not to go.
Our relationship blossomed, and in 3 short months, I was ready to propose. I bought an engagement ring and did the respectful thing. I asked her father for her hand in marriage. He said he wanted to think about it, but I proposed that night anyway, in a horse-drawn carriage. Now, in the interest of full honesty, I should mention that the carriage was not prearranged, and Danielle paid for the ride. I did not give my father-in-law time to answer for fear he'd say no.
Everything was so perfect. We were in love, and we were going to spend the rest of our lives together. I'd never been in a relationship where I just craved someone else's attention and time like I did with Kelsey. I was so accustomed to not feeling anything, I told myself that this must be what it feels like to be in love. I should have realized we weren't perfect, but as far as I was concerned, we had a great relationship.
Shortly after getting engaged, I moved in with her and her parents and brother. At this point, I had been away from CR for some time. I did still speak of it, and even told Danielle about my past addiction to porn. Wasn't really so much in the past, because I wasn't really completely honest with her about it. I told her that I no longer struggled with it even though I did and was currently in a relapse. I had convinced myself that if she ever found out who I really was, she'd want nothing to do with me. Well, one night, she discovered the images on a device I had been using.
When I discovered Kelsey had relapsed, I was shocked, but deep down, I felt like it was my fault. I believed him when he said he didn't struggle with it anymore. So I wasn't sure who or what to believe. I wasn't even sure if I wanted to get married. I was officially broken in every way I can think of.
During a confrontation initiated by my family, I came clean to Danielle for the very first time since we met. I was terrified that my marriage had been destroyed before it had ever begun. I remember sitting there, Danielle in tears. I hated myself. I felt completely unloved and unlovable. I was buried under a huge load of guilt and shame. I felt dirty and exposed. I recall praying to God, God, I've messed up. I just want to feel loved right now. God, please tell me I'm loved. I'm so scared. I just need to be loved. And I began to weep. It was in this moment that I felt an embrace, as though someone had placed their arms around me to comfort me and assure me that all would be okay, that I was loved. But there was no one else on the end of that patio with me. To this day, I believe that God gave me a hug when I needed it most. In my darkest moment, he was there, and he loved me, even in all my shame and guilt. Just like it says in Psalm 87:15, but you, O Lord, are a God of compassion and mercy, slow to get angry and filled with unfailing love and faithfulness. Danielle and I went home from my parents' house and talked about what had happened. I agreed to return to CR, and she said that she would still marry me and still love me. God had shown me his sovereign love yet again by giving Danielle a heart capable of forgiving me. I went to CR the very next week.
Now, up to this point, I had no knowledge of recovery. I was excited that he was going to get help, but I wasn't addicted to anything, so it wasn't the place for me. Kelsey wanted me to go with him that next week to chip night to see him get his blue chip. I had no idea what that meant, but I said I would go. I thought to myself, I'll just go to support him. That was my plan, but it turns out that wasn't God's plan. So the next Thursday night, I showed up at this massive church. I gave myself a mental coaching, told myself I'd sit with the few people that I already knew, and I wouldn't have to talk to anyone else. I'd be invisible to everyone and somehow get through the night. That didn't exactly go as planned. I can't tell you how many people came up to me and talked to me that very first night, but it was many, many more than I was comfortable with. Finally, I was able to slip into the service and sit with Kelsey. After he went up and got his blue chip, the band played this song called Freedom Song, and it was a sucker punch to my defenses. I broke down and cried out to God. I thought that since I'd boxed up my depression and shoved it down inside, it shouldn't hurt anymore. During the message, I tried to compose myself a little bit. I told myself there wasn't anything anyone could do to help me not feel the pain of my past, but I wasn't going to break down and cry in front of a group of people I didn't know. That's not something I do. After a large group, I really wanted to skip the class and just hide out in the bathroom for the next hour, but someone spotted the newbie and shuffled me into newcomers group. In that little room, I got to hear the most incredible story of life change I've ever heard, even to this day. From somewhere inside of me came this thought that maybe God could work in my life like he had in Lane and Marsha's if I opened up and let others see the real me. At the end of the newcomers group, Marsha offered blue chips to anyone who wanted a life change. I froze, and I watched every single person reach out and take one. I couldn't move. I was on the edge of breaking down in tears in front of strangers again. Then Marsha turned and asked me directly if I wanted a blue chip. I don't remember if I shook my head or if I was able to squeak out, no. I just remember the group being over and everyone leaving as I slowly started to cry. Marsha came over, sat beside me, and asked me why I was there. What was left of my walls came tumbling down. I spilled everything. My fiance's addiction, finding the images on our computer, my feelings of shame and guilt over being his second choice, the depression that was controlling my life. The moment after I told her all of these things felt like an eternity. I expected her to leave or tell me to leave. I expected her to say I was too broken to be fixed. I expected her to judge me and tell me I was even more worthless than I thought that I was. but Marcia just smiled and held out a blue chip. I took it and finally let my last mask fall. I wish I could say that I'd been instantly healed, but I can say I did start to feel a stirring of change.
I kept coming back, and she did too, off and on at first. But then we started coming every week as we began to serve. She sang with the worship team, and I got to join the media team.
But even though I was at CR every week, I didn't feel like I was changing. That stagnant state in my recovery continued until I took a leap of faith and joined a step study. I walked into that room, was surrounded by ladies I didn't know. I immediately fell into doing the bare minimum because I was still afraid of opening up and letting anyone in. I had a what if for every situation. What if someone talked about what I shared? What if they knew my past and it changed what they already thought of me? What if everything I'd gone through didn't mean anything? And what if I did this recovery thing, invested my time, bared my scars, and still nothing changed? But then, in step 3 of the step study, something did change. Something inside of me changed. I finally realized that I was unable to recover on my own. I asked God for his help in making me who I was meant to be. I completed that step fully and turned everything over to him. Afterward, I found myself opening up more and starting to build actual relationships with people around me. I was starting to become the person that he wanted me to be, the person that I always wanted to be, and in turn, the person that God wanted me to be.
I, too, started a step study. I knew what I had to do, and I was ready to do it. This is where I got to do the real work of my recovery. The most impactful step for me was step 4. This is where I got to release the shame and guilt I had carried all those years. I got to hear God's verdict concerning my role in the abuse I suffered. And you know what that verdict was? Not guilty.
Yeah.
If you've listened to me, if you've ever been the victim of abuse of any kind, you are not guilty. It is not your fault. You do not have to carry that guilt and shame anymore. I learned how to forgive those who'd hurt me, and I stopped blaming God. Most importantly, I forgave and even began to love myself. I also learned my true value, the value that Jesus gave me on the cross. I now know I am priceless. Jesus paid a price for me that no one else ever could. He gave his life for me. Through this step study, God has changed me. I no longer feel like an outsider. In fact, I fit in with the most amazing group of people anywhere. That's right here at Celebrate Recovery. And the best part is everyone fits in. Yeah. And it's not because of who we are. It's because of who Jesus is. He is our Savior and the one true higher power.
This program has changed my life in so many ways. Through this amazing program and God's unending grace, my depression no longer has control of my life. However, that's not the most incredible part. God has reshaped my mind and my heart. He has shown me the worth that I've always had, even when I couldn't see it myself. God has given me back so much more than my depression ever stole. He has completely fulfilled the promise he gave me in 1 Peter 5:10. And after you have suffered a little while, the God of all grace, who has called you to his eternal glory in Christ, will himself restore, strengthen, and establish you. Because of this, I have real relationships with my family, my friends, and so many of you here.
Throughout these years in recovery, we've slowly given every area of our lives over to God. He started his work in January 2016 by telling us to give over our finances. We obeyed and believed that he would provide for us, and he has blessed us in every area of our lives.
Then, through Pastor Lane and Marcia, God told us that he wanted us to give up our right to drink alcohol. We obeyed and were able to both learn how we'd been using alcohol to deal with issues in our lives instead of trusting that God would work everything for our good.
The next year, we found ourselves in a really rough patch in our marriage. We were both trying to do marriage the way we thought it should be done instead of following God's plan for marriage. When we listened to God and gave him control, we found greater joy in our marriage and many, many fewer reasons to fight.
Another year, we gave God control over our living situation, and he provided us the ability to purchase our first home.
And in 2019, my mother was diagnosed with an advanced stage of ovarian cancer. I had to place her healing in God's hands, and I am happy to say she is now 100% cancer-free right now.
And then, almost a year ago, God gave us another miracle, our daughter, Abigail Carla. She was born on October 22nd with 3 different undiagnosed major heart defects. In her short life so far, she's had 3 surgeries, 2 of which were open heart, been intubated for over 20 days, spent 89 nights in the hospital, taken thousands of doses of medication, battled through withdrawals from those very same medications, struggled with learning how to eat, endured countless tests and doctor's appointments, and through it all, she is just the happiest, smiley, joy-filled girl. In the face of all of this, we could have relapsed. It would have been really easy to do, and most people wouldn't have even blamed us for it. But we didn't, and instead, we chose to trust God with the most important things in our lives, our baby girl. Looking back, I can see God's hand over our lives the last 7 years. And I know beyond all doubt that if we hadn't trusted God with our finances, our recovery, our marriage, our future, our families, we would have never been able to fully trust him with our daughter and surrender her life to his will. She is not fully healed. She may never be fully healed, but we continue to trust him because he's the God of miracles.
You see, recovery doesn't mean nothing bad happens. Life is going to have its ups and downs. There will be struggles. Recovery doesn't prevent them. It does equip you to conquer them as they arise. It strengthens you to walk through the storm. You see, recovery isn't about avoiding the storm. Recovery is learning to sing in the rain.
To the newcomer, I want to congratulate you for taking those first steps through those doors. What you've done tonight marks the first of many steps in your recovery journey. Working this incredible program, and with God's grace, you can change and become the person he's calling you to be.
You may think you don't need this, or you're too far gone for anything to help. If you feel like you're messed up, your sin's too dark, or that you're just no good, or maybe if you struggle like I did with feeling hated and unloved, I want you to know you are loved more than you can possibly imagine. See, Romans 5:8 says, "But God showed his love for us, and that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us." It means while we were still alcoholics and addicts and codependents, users and abusers, controllers, manipulators, thieves, and even murderers, while we were all of these things, God loved us and sent his son Jesus to die for us. Yeah. And that he might redeem us and have the relationship he still desires with us.
God's grace means that all of your mistakes can now serve a purpose instead of just serving shame. I want you to know that there's incredible healing in this place. You are surrounded by so many miracles in this room alone.
And it does work if you work it. You're never too far gone for God. He knows where you've been, where you are, and where you're going. Let him guide your path. And if you've never had anywhere to call home before, you are home now, and you will always be welcome here.
Simply take this journey one day at a time. Recovery can be a slow process, but quitting won't speed it up. So keep showing up and work these steps because they work for a reason.
Don't leave until your miracle happens. Here at CR, we are called Forever Family. We love you, and we want to be your forever family.
Thank you for letting us share.